I say I'm the man? Am I losing my mind? Am I wasting my time? Do I know who I am? I don't know who I am. Can I say I'm the man? I don't know, I don't know, I don't know, I don't know, I don't know who I am.
So confused in this life full of mystery. Guess I'm glad it ain't a life full of misery. I wanna dance, I wanna fly, I wanna let it free. But that's a different side of people they don't wanna see. I've been caught up in my mind sometimes, so alright, just to feel alright. And when the rhyming did good, that's when I just understood it was by design. And when I feel this way, I just walk and talk to appear this way, baby. I don't know what to say, baby. I don't know what I am, baby. That's just how I play, baby. Yeah.
I don't know who I am. Can I say I'm the man? Am I losing my mind? Am I wasting my time? Do I know who I am?
Powered by Riverside FM.
What up, UP Nation? This is your host, Lionel Jones, along with sports guru, Mr. Patrick Buchanan, here for another episode of Unconventional Playbook. Pat is getting closer and closer to Saturday, my man. Minnesota Vikings versus the Raiders. A first look at our squad, first look at J.J. McCarthy, Sam Darnold, everything that we've been itching to see. Our practice that we're supposed to go to got canceled on Monday. So that's getting me more starving to see some Vikings football. One day closer to Sunday, man.
Oh, yeah. It's just one day closer to
Saturday,
opener.
I should say. Not Sunday,
one day
Saturday.
closer to Saturday, one day closer to the opener. Yeah, I mean, it's, this spring weather is unfortunate, man. This spring weather. Look, it's summertime, and I'm talking about this spring weather with all this rain that be happening. So everybody up in the Midwest, you understand what we're talking about with that rain. So, yeah, we missed the night practice. They'll redo that, but I'm excited to go to the stadium on Saturday, watch them up close, get to look at, I was paying attention to KOC today, Coach, right?
Oh, yeah. I heard some of that.
Right? So KOC is like, they be trying to ask that man questions, and KOC got
putting him on the spot, Patrick. They try to put him on the spot.
He was like, listen, this is how you're going to talk about the depth chart, right? He was like, well, who's playing? He was like, well, I feel that's something that the players need to know before reading it in the media and stuff like that, right?
Right.
Like, Fab just answered the question. He was like, we got
That's coaching
practice.
etiquette.
Yeah. Like, we got another practice. We'll address you on Thursday. Okay, well, address us Thursday, man. Because who really going to play out there?
Yeah, we're going to dive into it. Thanks again, UP Nation, for supporting us. 12,000 strong. We're growing and growing every day. We love all of the members of UP Nation. But one shout out I want to give to my girl, Sarah Zhang. Just been really supportive of the channel, supportive of the UP. So when we have special UPers out there supporting us, we just want to give it a shout out, Miss Sarah Zhang, a brand new member of the UP, loves our content, has some really complimentary things to say about our show. So Sarah, thanks for the support, and keep watching us on the UP. You never know, maybe we'll have you on the show. We're going to start having some fans on the show, especially, Pat, around Viking season, some post-game shows to give people a chance to either congratulate our team, or if the team plays a bad game on Sunday, give them a chance to vent a little bit. So we're going to open this thing up to all of our UP Nation.
There we go. Let's go. Let's get them live ones. Let's get them live podcasts going, see what you got to say.
Well, the Minnesota Vikings are ramping up to play Saturday, and obviously the main source of conversation is going to be this every day until we start to see it. It's kind of that quarterback competition. You and I have talked about it exhaustively over the past couple of podcasts, but we're going to touch on it again today because, it seems to me that competition, Pat, is changing. You mentioned the word last podcast, teeter-totter. I thought that was a perfect way to describe it, to give a visual. It's like one day is JJ, next day is Sam Darnold. For me, it's fun because this is the way a quarterback battle should go. Nobody's giving an inch. everybody's being cordial, but everybody is coming with their A game every day, or at least trying to come with their A game every day. They're going to be put on display on Saturday. What are some things that maybe you are expecting to see from both quarterbacks, J.J. McCarthy and Sam Darnold?
Coach, I mean, if Sam plays or whatever, so I mean, I'm gonna be honest. I think this is all by design.
Yeah.
I think this is because at the end of the day, they do got to play the New York Giants on week 1, right? Like, why give the Giants anything, right? You got to figure out who's going to start. Both of them play whatever. What I want to see from them, Donald, like I know it'll be a little vanilla, but for both of them, I want to see them comfortable, right? Comfortable on the field, comfortable in control, right, of the game. You're going to hit adversity bumps or whatnot, just to overcome it. But I want to, for Sam Darnold, right, you had your journey. This is the 4th team. So whether you're going to be a starter or a backup for the Minnesota Vikings, what type of excitement can you show us and for us to look forward to, right, as a quarterback back there, right? Are you making the right reads, right? Are you making sure you're throwing away when it's not there? Are you using your legs when it's there, right? You making sure that you hit the targets, with touch and downfield whenever you can. So it's just complete control of the offense, really, for Sam Darnold. When it comes to J.J. McCarthy, man, you're a rookie, right? I don't have expectations for you, right?
You don't have any expectations, Pat?
I'm being honest, man. Not right now. I don't have expectations for J.J. McCarthy. I just want you to go out there and play football. Show us the winner who you are. That's what I want to see. I want to see the boisterous personality, right? I want to see you, the winner out there, right? For you. Like, it's less about you, more about Donald, in my opinion, what I want to see, right? Because can't nobody judge you when you ain't never stepped. This is your first NFL action. No high expectations coming over here for me. Like, I know everyone wants you. I was just talking to someone. It's National Night Out tonight, right?
Yeah.
So I'm talking to some of my neighbors down there about it and about, the depth chart and how they started everything, how the depth chart came out there. And, people in the community talking about everybody wants to see him. And there's one guy, talking to, and he was like, but we got to be patient with it, right? And that's what KOC has been, strategically smart, patience with it. So that, to me, it's just going out there and showing who you are and giving us the first glimpse. Because, yes, if we were to survey the Minnesota fans, right, I'm pretty sure you'd have at least 60+%, maybe 70+% wanting him to be out there. Obviously, we traded up and spent the 10th pick of the draft on him. So, yeah.
Yeah, the $1 million question, going back to what you just said, it's National Night Out in Minnesota. You're vibing with your neighbors out there, having a little communion out there with your neighbors. The $1 million question is your neighbors part of UP Nation? Do they know who they're living next door to? Mr. Patrick Buchanan, part of the nation.
So I'll be honest with you, Coach. My neighbors aren't, but now they will be. Like, when I left, right, I came home a little early, chill out before we get on here. And everybody, my wife was like, I had to give everyone, right, to subscribe to it, because they was like, oh, we wanted to listen to his podcast. He didn't talk much about it. He was looking in a focus place or something, right? So when my wife got home, it was like, okay, all these people want to come and subscribe and support you guys with UP. So I was like, all right, well, hopefully you took care of it. If not, I'll see all my neighbors and shout out to them. So I don't get much out in my neighborhood with my neighbors. I see them out when you're walking the dog or you're mowing the lawn or, things like that. But National Night Out, unless I see them at the gas station. So I don't get to see them that much, talk to them, because I'm a busy person. So the opportunity too, I wasn't thinking about that. But hey, Lakeville, Minnesota, I'm with y'all. Enjoy the UP Nation.
the merrier. My basketball team got a hold of some information about our podcast, but that, I'll leave that for another show. Back to the Vikings. I agree with you, man. I want to see some comfort from Sam Darnold. This guy has been vilified as being a bust and really, really not being good. And some people have said, hey, this is going to be his last chance with the Minnesota Vikings, so he's got to come out and play well. I am with you, man. I just want to see some comfort out there. And you and I don't have the luxury of being in practice every day. So sometimes we have to rely on all the reports that are coming out of the Vikings facility. And the few reports that I've heard is that he's had some up and down days. He's had more good days than bad days. But, he's having trouble with some of those intermediate routes, some of those short routes. He's improved in that over the last couple of days. So I want to see that transition over to Saturday's game. As far as J.J. McCarthy, the one thing, Pat, that I have been, I don't know if you've heard this, but the one thing that I've been hearing about J.J., that is a consistent critique on this young man, is that right now as a rookie, and I think he should be, because you mentioned he's a first-year player, he's a rookie, is that he's processing things slowly. Sometimes he stares down his receivers. Some defenders have been able to jump routes at certain times in practice. But all the reports are saying that's normal for a quarterback just coming out of college, especially a quarterback that wasn't asked to do much at Michigan in terms of throwing the ball. So he's just getting his feet wet. But if I look at Saturday, I want to see how quickly he's processing, because he knows it's something that he's got to work on. Can he go from his first look to his second look to his third look to his check down? Those type of things, because right now, from everything that I'm hearing about J.J. McCarthy, they're pleased in a lot of areas. The only area that they're not pleased at is him being able to process through his wide receiver read. So that's something that I'm going to be looking for on Saturday.
Well, that's going to happen, though, man. Like everybody said, going up against B-Flow defense is going to be different than what he sees on Saturday, right? So there's things like that I hear, but once again, I'll tell everybody this, and I'll just want to remind everybody we got to, no matter what happens out there Saturday, C.J. Stroud.
Yeah.
C.J. Stroud, right?
Yeah.
And if
he didn't have a great camp last year, Pat.
Oh, no, C.J. Stroud didn't. C.J. Stroud, I watched all 3 of his preseason games.
Right? I was watching him. I'm a Buckeye. So right? I was watching him.
I was watching guys, and you just see that they didn't, but he has weapons around him. That's called good coaching. And that's, for him, he did a fantastic job of film evaluation, right? So, and they're playing in the confines of a very vanilla playbook during the preseason. So you're not throwing out your good stuff. You guys are going to play with this little vanilla playbook during the preseason, and you never know what type of defenses come at you, right? Defense coordinators might come with some nasty stuff at you, and y'all just. But we'll get to see it. I'm excited to see it, but it's more about Sam Darnold than JJ. JJ's the more exciting part for me. Sam Darnold is the question.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned that you really didn't have any expectations for Sam Darnold. It's a preseason game, and you're right. I think on the offensive side of the ball, I think it's going to be very vanilla, and I think on the defensive side of the ball, it's going to be very vanilla as well. These coaches are going to keep their playbook close to the vest. But any expectations? I mean, just your personal expectations for the Minnesota Vikings team. Like, is there just one thing that you need to see, even though it's a preseason game? Is there any one thing that you want to see as a Vikings fan in that first preseason game that ordinarily maybe you didn't see, or maybe something that you feel like the Vikings just need to get better at as an organization?
It's what they've been talking about all camp. It's the physicality and the toughness.
Yes.
I want to see that. You're stressing year 3. You learn from year 1 to year 2 to year 3. Let's show that. And I know it doesn't mean anything, but shit, I want us to win the preseason game, right? But I want to see the physicality and toughness. You can play vanilla and still have physicality and toughness where when you look at it, you're like, Okay. They for real, right?
Yeah.
Like if you're seeing it from the first to the second to the third team, then you're seeing they're building that's a culture thing, right?
Yeah.
So if you
Yeah.
see it with no matter which guys are out there, that's a culture thing. So that's what I really want to see. I want to see because it's you if you're gonna stress it, right? Then let's see it. Now you're always building into certain things. We know there's coaches like when we come into our preseasons, right? The fixed product is not always there, but I think just to show that you're moving around and you guys got this nose for the ball and you're swarming around the ball and you hitting hard, like you taking on blocks the right way, like you can tell the physicality part in it, right? So that's what I want to see. What about you, man?
Yeah, you and I are in step, man. I was going to mention the physical part of the game. I think the Vikings, under the tutelage of KOC, have been called in multiple national media outlets a very soft finesse team. And I think KOC is hearing some of these things because this is probably the most physical camp. You can hear from, people that are analyzing the Vikings that are at practice every day that this is the most physical camp that they've ever had. So I think KOC is hearing the noise. So I'm with you. I want to see that carry over to Saturday. I want to see some physicality. I want to see some physicality on that defensive line, offensive line. Even though Aaron Jones probably won't get any time, I do want to see different components of the running game. Like those things are important. And I am right with you. See, coaches think alike. And you and I have been coaching, although a different sport, we've been coaching for a long time. And I have never been under the impression that these games don't matter in terms of wins and losses. Yeah, it doesn't go on your record. It doesn't count towards the playoffs or the Super Bowl. But as a coach, how can you not send a message to be competitive? How can you not send a message that you don't really care about these games? Because you can't turn that type of stuff on and off. You've got to be mentally there, and you've got to essentially prepare these guys to win those football games, because some of these guys, this is how they're going to put bread on the table. There's no guarantees. The guys that you see on the sidelines with sunflower seeds and no pads, those guys are going to make the team. But the guys that got their pads on and ready to play, they've got to show either the Vikings that they belong on that team and that they want to win, or they got to get good film. So even if they get cut from the Vikings, they get an opportunity to go elsewhere.
Oh yeah, definitely for sure. So, culture thing, we've been talking about the culture and we're talking about things like that. So as much as I'm talking about the physicality, I want to see the joy, right? I want to see whether that's on the sidelines, how people are responding, because there's going to be a lot of mistakes made. And I want to see how the guys that are in that first team, right, are helping out the guys in the second and third team, because that's what really is going to define it too, and how the coaches are coaching. Like that's what I pay attention to. I pay attention to all of it. Don't get me wrong, I enjoy the game, but man, that sideline is important. That sideline is the locker room, right? You're now in public of what your locker room is. Yeah. Right. So that I like to look at as well. That's just me going in depth with it, right? You can analyze a lot from it,
Yeah. Let's talk about the off the court stuff. You mentioned the KOC presser, where the journalist was asking him for his depth chart and who's going to play what minutes. And he was like, KOC's all about etiquette. He's like, I'm not going to let you know that till I let my players know that. Come back and talk to me on Thursday. The one question that he was hit with was, I believe they had talked to one of the Wilfs about a contract extension. And I remember in our last podcast, one of the members of UP Nation asked about the contract extension. And so when I heard that, I thought about our member of UP Nation. Take me into the mind, Pat, of the Wilfs. You see all the work that KOC and Kwesi have done. They're tied together at the hip. They just drafted their future franchise quarterback. For all intents and purposes, they've had a pretty good draft. They've had a pretty good offseason. Why not, at this point, give KOC and Kwesi the extension? I'm not saying they should get it. I'm not saying they shouldn't get it. I'm just asking you to take me into the mind of the Wilfs when they basically said, we're not going to talk contract extension about KOC and Kwesi. Why wouldn't they do that?
Well, the same reason why Justin Jefferson got his with 1 year left on his contract, right? Or Darisaw, or them not going into talks with other people. Like, it's the reason why seldomly, whether it's coach or players with 2 or more years left on your contract, you're not in renegotiation, right? So I completely understand. I'm like, we're treating the players that way. Are we going to say that the coaches are above the players? Where, okay, this is their 3rd year out of a 4-year contract. After the 3rd year, that's when we're going to talk about re-upping or not, right?
Yeah.
And I respect that. I think it's the same process being taken that is being taken with the players. That is part of the culture. Like, if you, like KOC said, like, I can't think about that. I can't focus on that. I got to focus on these players and these coaches and doing my job. Something that is out of my control, right? And that's out of his control. What is in his control is what he's focused on. Coaching up his players and supporting his coaches, making sure those are doing the right job, right? Because it all falls on him, right? Shit. I think that's the most fantastic answer. It's kind of like, it's an answer that if you have been a coach, you understand that answer. And I understand, right? I'm an administrator, right? I'm an athletic director, right? There's decisions that, like, I'm not going to talk about a coach coming back next year in the middle of the season or right at the beginning of the season. You play out this year and then we talk about it, right? So it's the same thing, right? We talk about it when the time is right. And when the time is right is when there's 1 year left for them on their contract. And I think it's it's part of what the culture is, and it's fantastic.
But do you think there's a possibility, Pat, that it could be more than culture? Like, is there something that the Wolves need to see? Like, when J.J. McCarthy came in, KOC talked about J.J. he has to hit these points. There's a checklist that I have, and he's got to learn this, he's got to learn this, he's got to learn this, and when he does these things or show us these things, we'll check it off. Is there a possibility that the Wilfs could have a checklist? Like, this season is crucial. Like, I don't think there's anybody out there that's saying absolutely not. The Vikings are not going to make the playoffs. But on the other side of it, I don't think there's anybody saying the Vikings are for sure going to make the playoffs. Everything is kind of 50-50. A lot of it stems from the quarterback play. Are the Wilfs looking at this season as an opportunity to grade something and then they'll sign off on it? Or do you just believe it's strictly culture and that's the way the Vikings kind of do things?
Well, it's partially cultures, but at the same time, it's evaluation going into it, right? If Kwesi wouldn't have had the offseason he had, right? If it looked like year 1 or 2, he's out of here. I can say that, right? I can say that, and I feel confident about it, right? I don't think the judgment of what J.J. McCarthy does this year is a judgment of him, but the team went people still don't realize 7-10 with what you went through.
It's a good job.
It's a pretty damn good record.
It's a good job.
They can't be less than 7-10. I will tell you that right now.
Yeah.
If he goes 7-10 or worse, like, seriously, like, that's some front office, that's ownership, that's the Wilfs talking to each other, right? I don't believe that they can go 7-10. It doesn't matter what the outsiders think or whatever. It's inside that building. They expect to win. They expect to be fighting for that division title. Like, Detroit, you got this. We wouldn't. But there are a lot of things that's got to be fixed, right?
Yeah.
Like, knock on wood about health. Let's say everyone's healthy, right? Turnovers, that's a discipline thing. That's a discipline thing, right?
Yeah.
Penalties, that's a discipline thing. Those are things within a culture, right?
Yeah.
And those are the things that killed us early on when we were healthy, right? To start 1-5 or whatever it was, right? So those are culture killers right there. And the players might make that, but that's going to fall on KOC.
You keep saying 7-10, you said it during the last podcast. It's what the Vikings record was last year, and it really resonated with me. Like, I knew they were 7-10, but when you went on with your explanation, it really resonated with me. I sat back and thought about it, and the Vikings played 4 quarterbacks. They played 4 quarterbacks last year, and they won 7 games. And then you could argue they lost the turnover battle for the majority of their games. So now you're talking about the discipline you were just talking about. They still went 7-10. And then you can also argue, you look at the Denver Broncos game, the Cincinnati Bengals game. All of these games were games that they should have won if they just could make a play and not turn the ball over. I think that speaks volumes about KOC. Having to play 4 quarterbacks and then going through all of those issues last year to be 7-10, you could argue they could have been 10-7. Very easy in those games. So I really didn't think about that until you hit me with that last podcast and was like, look, Vikings went 7-10. They lost their starting quarterback. They lost Justin Jefferson. You could throw that on top of them too.
Yeah.
I thought it was, a great job for KOC.
Oh yeah, he's 7-10, man. That is with everything that there ain't too many people that can do that, right? There's not too many people that could have to go through that, right? Dallas Cowboys, they lost some defensive players and they overcame that when they went through some things, right? But they didn't lose Dak Prescott and CeeDee Lamb for a minute.
Right.
Like, let me see you lose Dak Prescott and CeeDee Lamb for a minute, right? Dak Prescott for the rest of the season and CeeDee Lamb for a gap, right? If their defense is intact, they probably could have done something, but I don't know if Trey Lance was ready, right? You know what I mean, right? Does Green Bay make the run without Jordan Love, right? Let's see what Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs, during the season, they play around. You lose Patrick Mahomes, who back there, right?
Right.
So when you lose who is your starting quarterback with any team, especially a team who is the defending NFC North champs, right? But they kicked themselves in the butts. Like that Philadelphia Eagle game under Philly, we should have won it. But we gave up 4 turnovers, I think we had, right?
Yeah.
So, is the turnover battle was a discipline thing, right? So that's part of preseason of seeing ball control, right? Are we controlling the ball? That's part of the evaluation with KOC. Yeah, he did a hell of a job coaching, but there's more like what he did was fantastic when it came to coaching those quarterbacks up and coaching that team up to even be where they were. But at the same time, these close games, turnover battles, I believe in year 3, this will be the best defense that he has had to coach under, right? That is what I do believe, right? So that will help with it, right? When you potentially have a top 10 defense.
Yeah, the one thing I will say, and I'm being a bad host right now, so I apologize to UP Nation, because I don't have the stat in front of me, but there was a stat that they kept throwing up last year in last year's games that just blew my mind. And it was like when the Vikings win the turnover battle under KOC, they're like 14-15-1. I may not be on point with that, but I know I'm damn sure close. That they're like 14-1, 15-1, and when they lose the turnover battle, it is almost flipped. So if they just clean up the turnovers, let's just start there as a franchise. Just clean up the turnovers. Let's see what the Vikings do then, because right now their record under KOC, when they win that battle, they're winning football games. Yeah. And so that's a huge area where they've just got to clean it up. They just got to clean that up for sure.
Oh, for sure. Clean that up and control in year 1. You won the majority of 1-score games. And I get it. It's competition, 1-score games, right? But last year we were on the other side of the 1-score games, right? Yeah. I think, 9 out of the 10 losses were 1-score games, if I'm not mistaken. So, could be 8 out of 10, 9 out of 10 of the 1-score. So we got to get back to winning those games much more as well, because that is going to happen. It's football, right? Yeah. You're not supposed to go in and blow everybody out. Like, that just happens.
Yeah. Another thing that was in the news this week, Jordan Addison was charged with 2 misdemeanors for his deal in Los Angeles, falling asleep on a ramp. He was intoxicated, blood alcohol level of 0.08. I've been hit with a lot of feedback from UP Nation, and let me be clear, man. I'm not advocating for Jordan Addison's behavior. I'm not advocating for Jordan Addison's decision making. Nobody's doing that here on the UP. But I do feel like we shouldn't throw this man out with the bathwater. Like, he is a young kid and he made a mistake. So I think there's always going to be that portion of the community that want their pint of flesh, especially when you're dealing with an athlete that's a multi-millionaire, that's making a lot of money. Flip Saunders used to always tell me this when I used to talk to him. He says, because you make a lot of money, that doesn't solve all the issues that you may have with maturing. Money does not equal maturing. And that is the truest thing that anyone has ever told me. So I think the kid, from what I see of him, is a good-hearted kid. I think he said the right things, that he's not going to let this happen again. He also said that he's willing to take any punishment that comes his way, which meaning he's holding himself accountable. He's probably going to get suspended for about 3 games. Now, I heard, earlier today that it could be 3 games this year. It could be 3 games next year, or even 2026. If I was him, I would want to get it over with as quickly as possible. Like, if I had an opportunity to get it done these first 3 games, I would get it done these first 3 games so I don't have to worry about it anymore. But what are your thoughts on Jordan Addison, man? I know that it's you and I both know that we're not condoning the behavior, but the kid deserves an opportunity to show that he can be a productive member in the Minnesota community and for the Minnesota Vikings.
Right. And for anybody out there, UP Nation, or anyone else you share with, talking with whoever you're talking with about this, right? He's a talent, but at the same time, I understand where people might be coming from and feeling, because it's not the first mistake he's made.
Correct.
Right? It's not the first. So let it be, get a chance somewhere else or whatever. I mean, you take your punishment, you get away with it. I get 2 speeding tickets going out there. I'm going to have to pay the fine, right? I'm not going to lose my license over 2 speeding tickets, right? I'm not saying it's speeding tickets he had. One was, the other one's a DUI, which is more serious. But more on that, like, all these reports keep coming out, reporters, everything, right? They brought in some guys that got cut. And it's like, oh, is this the end of Addison with everything? He's get his suspension. You're not just going to give up on a talent like that. That's just not going to happen, right? Now, I think if he screws up again, it's over and done with. He's going, Roger Goodell doesn't play. We know that the penalty is 3, game suspension is not going to happen. His date of court is until October 7th. So it may, like you said, it may not happen this year. We do have to understand, and I understand, right? Because since 1994, I've been a Minnesota Vikings fan. So when you make a mistake, right, Jordan Addison will win over all of you by his play on the field. That is one thing about Minnesota sports I know. So right now, yeah, ain't no games happening or whatever. You're doing you apologize, whatever, but guys, we should give him, this one, right? I get where you are. Ridley gave him 1 shot, right? And it was a speeding ticket, right? Ray, why are you listening to this? Raise your hand if you ain't never been pulled over for speeding. Yeah. Keep those hands down. Exactly, right? So that one, that's a wash. We can't even say that's a mistake, because that's a human thing that happens, right? My wife drives like she driving Miss Daisy, but she done been pulled over for speed, right? She's been pulled over for speed. So that one, the DUI is more, if it was a regular DUI, people have had it, whatever. What makes that DUI is tougher is that you had a teammate who passed away from someone who was driving under the influence. That's what intensifies this with him. But going back to it, he gets his day in court like everyone should, right? But we got to really pump the brakes on they bringing in some people who just got cut from a team thinking we're about to replace him. Nah, man, we're not about to replace that man with some people we bringing off the streets, right? I don't think they're at their wits' end with him because he's not doing the wrong things in practice. They're supporting him in that locker room, and everybody's just coming up to this conclusion about him, man. I am against his actions. I need you all to understand we are against his actions. But at the end of the day, he's a professional, and people make mistakes. And if you screw up again, I don't even want to talk about the man. You screw up again, I don't even want to hear his name, right? So that's how I feel about it.
Yeah, you know, the one thing that fans have a hard time with is putting the human element attached to their favorite athletes. I've been around sports my whole life. I've known a lot of professional athletes personally, whether they played in the NBA or whether they played in the NFL, and they are all human beings. And I think that a lot of people really forget about that. They see them on Sundays and they got their helmets and their pads on and they're dressed in their uniforms, and you look at them as entertainers. You look at them as chess pieces. And these guys and these gals are human beings. And sometimes, man, I tell my team this all the time. When they start judging each other during the course of the season, I always tell them, don't assume and don't judge anybody until you know their whole story.
Yep.
You know, Jordan Addison could have some demons that we don't know about that he's dealing with. He just had a teammate that died a few weeks before he got this DWI. Who knows how that affected him? You know, those guys
what was going on in his family life, right?
Exactly. You don't. You just don't know what's going on in somebody's life, and again, to fans, it's easy to forget that side of it because you don't get a chance to see them and how they live every day. That's why when you see these documentaries like Quarterback and Receiver and Last Dance, you get to see behind the curtain. You get to go in Justin Jefferson's house and see people didn't know that he lived in a duplex. So that gives you, another insight on Justin Jefferson. But this is why these documentaries are so successful, because it gives the fans a chance to attach the human element to their favorite players. And I don't think that they do that all the time. So it's easy to say, oh, man, get rid of him. He's a bum. He makes dumb decisions. I said it before. Put the football aside. How can the Minnesota Vikings, the NFL, help this young man start making right decisions? People forget one of the greatest wide receivers of our franchise history was Chris Carter. Look how many demons Chris Carter had to go through before he finally got it right. He became a man of God. He's got strong faith, still has strong faith, and it helped him turn his life around. And he said he's been at training camp the last couple of days, Pat. He said he was going to talk to Jordan Addison and don't ask him any questions about what he said to Jordan Addison, because he said that's going to be between him and Jordan. And I'm glad that Chris Carter's going to take the time to talk to that young man.
Yeah, man. Listen, we got to stop doing it. I remember Randy Moss is here, and this was early out in my early 20s, as I'm trying to go through life and figure out what I'm gonna do, right? And all the antics that was going on with Randy Moss. Some people wanted to do this, some people do that, and I was managing a holiday station store at the time out in Plymouth, and Sid Hartman came through, right? And I said, man, I praise you, like Sid. And he walked out the door, then he came back in and he said, young man, what do you mean by that? I said, you are the only positive sports writer, right, about Randy Moss. Everyone else, because of his youngness, crucifies him, right? And you try to get in depth. You got a good relationship with him. You talk down and you write positive about him. You don't write, because some people are going through things, right? And that's for all of us. We don't know. Let's stop judging them. I'm not going to be the one on here, but I will be the one to say, the first one to say, if he makes another mistake, hey, just try your luck somewhere else, right? You got to figure out life, you know. So yeah, man, it's you know, hey man, y'all, listen, man. Hopefully he plays Saturday, right? Because I think we need to be reminded of what type of talent that is, though. At the end of the day, Coach, right? I think we need to be reminded what type of talent that is. We talking about before y'all want to run somebody out of town. You need to, we know y'all are fans, right? He ain't gonna murder nobody. He did screw up, right? But yeah, let's watch him play. Maybe unpopular opinion, maybe not, but it's truth, it's facts. I've lived life with a lot of different things happening to me.
Yeah, well, I know you're on point when you say as soon as he scores that big touchdown for the Vikings, I think a lot of the fans are going to forget anything that he's done in the past.
We're erupting. Oh, 69,000 people, 71. We erupted. You know, we high-fiving each other, whatever. It's you know what's going on. Sure. If not worried about it.
Yeah. Well, the Minnesota Vikings are getting ready to do some things on Saturday. As you can see, Pat is excited. I'm as excited. You know, the one thing that I'm looking forward to with this UP thing is that, you know, we've been on the air for about 3 months right now, and I'm looking forward to the post-game shows with the Vikings, you know, being able to come on after shows. I didn't have an outlet last year. When I used to go to games and watch shows, I had so many thoughts on my mind. You and I used to call each other almost after every game. So now we get to put this on display for UP Nation. I can't wait for that. Again, what we're going to do, a lot of good things coming in the future. We're going to have some callers call in. We're going to have some special guest fans. We may have Fan Friday, where we invite a fan every week to come on and talk sports with us. You know, put it in the comments if you're interested in doing that. We also, what you guys don't know about my guy, Mr. Patrick Buchanan, is he is a parlay savant. So he's gonna have a special segment on the show where he gives you some games that he thinks are really good to bet on, and he's going to give you an insight on those games. We're going to call it Patrick's Picks. So during the course of the week, you know, before the college football games on Saturday, before the NFL games on Sunday, we're going to have a segment called Patrick Picks. When Patrick talks about his picks, I listen. And so you guys are going to learn that this man knows what he is talking about. You looking forward to all of that, Pat?
Oh, yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I want to engage with the fans. I want to say something real quick, right? Before y'all respond after watching this episode, right? When it comes to Patrick's Picks, there is no reimbursement policy, right? There are things that happen in a game, but those are things that they're going to be picks that I'm making, right? And I'm not about throwing my money away, right? So there are picks that I'll be making, picks that I like, and, you know, it's just things, right? There's things that happen, right? You never know, right? But there'll be some of mine, and there are a lot of things that I look at when I go into taking picks.
Yeah, Unconventional Playbook is not responsible for your losses. Please gamble responsibly. We got to put that on there for sure. But we're looking forward to doing that, man. We got a lot of good stuff coming up with Unconventional Playbook. Anything you want to say to the UP, Pat, before we get out of here?
No, man, everybody, like, once again, we're at this exciting time. You know, I do, you know, soon we're getting to diving into some Gophers, right, with PJ and things like that with this on UP for sure. But, you know, just enjoy this, and no matter what happens Saturday, don't read too deep into it. Like, don't read too deep into it. Like, I was at the, you know, National Night Out tonight with my neighbors. Like, they was like, how you able to do a podcast? How you know, you're up here and there, down, high and low. And I was like, about 7-8 years ago, I learned how to be a fan, but not let them get me down and depressed and not let me get too high and excited for what could happen. I've learned that being a Vikings fan. And if you guys are Vikings fans, you understand what I mean by that statement, right? So no matter what happens, it's just a game. It's just a game. And it's just the first preseason game.
That's a great bit of advice. I'm the same way. This is the first year, honestly. Pat, you know I've been a Minnesota Vikings fan ever since I moved up here to the Minnesota, Wisconsin area way back in 1991. I've just become a fan, a huge fan, and I always have these expectations for the Vikings to be the best team and go to the playoffs and all that. And I still have those wants and needs, but this is the first year where I feel like it's okay to start building a good foundation. And not that I want them to take a step back, but I understand if they have to take a step back to allow their franchise quarterback to grow, to allow themselves to be more flexible under the cap, to put together the most competitive team possible, but just with the foresight of knowing that the next 2 to 3 years, the Minnesota Vikings are going to be a relevant football team. And I think Kwesi and KLC are directing the team towards that. So I have no expectations this year. I'm just going to sit back and really, really enjoy the year. I'm going to enjoy the wins. The losses are still going to hurt. But like you said, I'm not going to overblow it. I understand. I get it. So I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, we got it. I think you talk about it like when was the last time we had this quarterback battle? And the process is what we really have to sit back and understand, right? You look at the process of some of these, like how Mahomes became a starter or Jalen Hurts and things like that. Like, let's just say we go with Darnold for a while and we lose and they make the change in week 6 or 7 and then JJ goes off and winning. The first question everyone is going to say is, why wasn't he starting at the beginning?
Yeah.
Right? But these quarterback processes don't happen the way that we visualize them, right? Because we're not in there, right? My son, like, I'm going to just give a small example of something. I like sharing family stuff, Coach, right? And this is a coaching thing, right?
Yeah.
My son, his sophomore year was playing JV basketball. Everyone knew that, he had these seniors, up there. And everyone knew that he was probably the best point guard in the school, right? So my son played JV. They suited him for varsity, right? And this is sometimes you don't know what's inside. I never said nothing to the coach. My son, for the last 5 games of the regular season and through section playoffs, was the starting point guard. He went from JV point guard to the starting varsity point guard. I knew he had his seniors out there. I just kept my son in a positive place or whatever, but I could have went so far with that, right? But I didn't. And had I go that far, is my son the starting quarterback, right? So I didn't know what was going on in there. I didn't call the coach. I didn't need to know. I just told my son to keep grinding, right?
Yeah.
One of these things with JJ McCarthy, he's getting the right advice. He just got to keep grinding, and his number will get called, right? Yeah. I hopefully my example, my little story sheds light on that, because I think that's the one thing we got to do is we got to be patient like KOC is. And I got to pump the brakes myself because I want to see him out there, Coach.
I want to see him out there too. I want to see him out there too. I was listening to the Purple Daily guys. They got a fantastic show. I was listening to Judd, Mackey, and Declan, and they said one thing that, again, that resonated with me. Is they said, you know what? You can't put the toothpaste back into the container. And what they mean by that is for everybody that wants to see J.J. McCarthy, once you make that move and you anoint him the starter, you can't go back.
Yeah.
Like, you can't reel that back in.
No.
So when you give him that, you better make sure that he's the guy and he's ready. Because you don't want to start him and then 4 games down the line, he's not playing well, and now you got to bench him and put Sam Darnold in. Be patient. I agree with you, Pat. Be patient. When he gets his opportunity, he's going to get his opportunity. So we're going to support Sam Darnold until then, and then when JJ gets his opportunity, we're going to support JJ. So that's where I'm at with it.
Yep, that's where we at with it, right? And KLC know he has to do this right. Quasi and KLC in conversation, they got to do this right. How did we kind of? What was the second thing we talked about on the show? Extension.
Yeah,
they got to do this right. So
yep, for sure. Well, this has been Unconventional Playbook with your host Patrick Buchanan, along with Lionel Jones. Keep hitting that like and subscribe button. The music that you hear from Latreille, you can get him on Apple Music, Spotify. We're gonna have some more entertainers blessing us with their music coming up. This is going to be a Minnesota sports show, but we're going to dabble in a few other things. There's going to be some times where we talk about music, have some guests on, promote different artists that are out there playing. So this is what Unconventional Playbook is all about, is unconventional. So we're going to continue to do that. Keep hitting that like and subscribe button. We're continuing to grow. On behalf of the guru of Minnesota sports, Mr. Patrick Buchanan and Lionel Jones, we will make sure to see ya when we see ya. Latreille, take us home, man.
I don't know who I am. Can I say I'm a man? Am I losing my mind? Am I wasting my time? Do I know who I am?